Welcome back to the exciting conclusion of Tied to Zelda. This is the last story in Tripping Over the Lunch Lady. This is part 2 of that story, so if you're looking for part 1, you're going to want to click the video directly beneath this one. For everybody coming back for part 2, let's go back and check in on Zelda and Alfonso. The night before the festival, Zelda came over to my house with a bag of pan dolce. "What's this?" I asked. "I got you some heart-shaped cookies and manaritos. I think people should be rewarded for their hard work." She smiled and put the bag out, and I was about to take it. Then I noticed she was looking around me, and she whispered in a sneaky tone, "Who's here?" "Nobody. My parents." She cut me off and snatched the bag away and began poking me in the chest with her stiff finger and raised her voice. "Tomorrow, I want to win." Her face was inches from mine. I backed up. "Hey, I'll do my best." "You better. If you don't, I'm tying you up to a tree in the middle of nowhere and letting the ants eat you." "Look, what's the big deal? It's just a stupid contest," I said, shrugging my shoulders. "I want the passes to the sports camp," she said in a deep voice, and lowered her head like a charging bull. "But who wants to spend 3 weeks at a sports camp?" I said. "I do," she said. "I'd rather be at sports camp than in Utah with my jerk father." I knew her parents were separated, but I thought her father lived in a nearby town. "I thought your father lived in the valley." Zelda shook her head and let out a deep sigh. "No, he lives in Utah. We have to stay with him and my Tio. They're both jerks. All they do is drink beer and smoke all night." "Can't you stay somewhere else?" "No. Think we're rich or something? I want me and my mom and sisters to stay here for the summer. If I get the sports passes, my mom said we'd stay, and she'd find a job here." "Well, if we win the three-legged race, can't you trade your Splash World pass with someone for the sports camp pass?" I asked. "No, I promised my mother I'd let my little sisters." "Wouldn't be a Rita without a cat." "I'd have the Splash World pass if I won it." Her eyes got all watery. "Don't you see? We have to win the egg toss. I don't want my mother to be around my father." She dropped her head and let out a sigh. She held out the bag of pan dolce, and I took it. She sniffed a little and looked up at me. "Just do your best, okay?" I nodded. "I promise," I said. The next day, when I walked to the recess area, there was lots going on. The high school conjunto band was playing, and there was a popcorn machine, chili Frito pies, fajita tacos, buttered elotes, and raspas in all flavors. The sports camp had a banner up, and so did Splash World. There were kids tied at the ankles walking around, and others on the ground all tangled up. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned around, and there was Zelda. She didn't waste any time. She gave me a high five and tied our ankles together. We walked around the recess area like one big person. There was a long line of three-legged kids for the three-legged race, but Zelda said to focus on the finish line, not the competition. I was a little jumpy when we got in our starting positions, but Zelda put her arm around me and we held each other tight. I heard a whistle blow, and we were flying. I could hear our hearts pounding when we crossed the finish line, but we couldn't stop. We tripped all over the place and hit the ground rolling. But it was worth it because we won first place. Zelda and I were on the ground laughing through our bruises, and Jorge came running over to us. "Splash World, oh yeah," he said. Zelda and I walked around trying to shake off our scraped elbows and knees. Kids I didn't know were walking up to us saying what a great job we did. The egg toss had even more kids than the three-legged race. The teachers placed a long white string across the ground to divide the teams. Zelda put her hand up to give me another high five. 2 teachers walked between the teams carrying cartons of 24 eggs. When the teachers walked up to us, they asked us who was going to choose the egg. I pointed to Zelda. Zelda took one egg and held it with her fingers. She moved her wrist back and forth, studying the egg, looking for little thin cracks. She put it back and took another one. The teachers were like, "We don't have all day." Zelda held that egg and studied it too, and let the weight of it move her arm up and down. She raised it up to my eye level. "Only the ball," she said. The rules were easy. The kids on the right of our drama teacher threw first. Each time you caught the egg, you'd take one step back. getting farther and farther apart. The last team left, without breaking their egg, won the contest. When the whistle blew, all the kids threw their eggs except Zelda. She waited, and I could hear kids dropping their eggs and lots of laughing. I turned to look, but Zelda shouted, "Hey, focus on me and the egg." I nodded. She tossed her egg with a nice gentle arc, and I put my hands together and caught it easily. But we were only 5 feet from each other. We took a step back, and the whistle blew. Zelda put her hands up and gestured for me to wait until the other kids threw theirs. Through my side vision, I could see eggs all over the sky. I heard eggs breaking, its kids screaming, "Ah!" and "Yuck!" But Zelda kept gesturing for me to look at her. After a few seconds, she nodded, and I tossed my egg. She caught it like it belonged to her. Toss after toss, I could hear more eggs breaking, and the crowd laughing, but I kept my eyes on Zelda. Finally, we were really far from each other, and there were only 3 teams left. Then the teachers brought us closer and made us put our arms out so we could touch fingertips with the kids on each side. The whistle blew, but none of the kids threw their eggs. I looked to the right of Zelda, and there was Jorge waving. Our drama teacher shouted through his megaphone, "Well, somebody throw an egg!" We didn't say anything for a moment, and then Zelda spoke up. "We'll throw first," she said. The crowd went, "Ooh." I looked at Zelda, and she walked up to me. "Do your best." She handed me the egg. Then she ran back to her position and nodded at me. I took a few deep breaths and threw the egg with all my strength. The egg had a high arc. I overthrew it. Zelda had to take several quick steps back and dove for the egg. I put my hands to my face, ready to scream, but Zelda was a super athlete. The egg disappeared into her body, and she rolled on the ground and jumped up with the egg safe in her hand. The crowd went wild. The next team threw their egg, but the boy threw way too short. The girl ran forward fast and caught it, but the egg exploded in her hands and face. The crowd went, "Ew!" and there was tons of laughter. After the crowd settled down, Jorge threw his egg, and it was perfect. His partner didn't have to move an inch, and it floated right into her hands. The crowd cheered and clapped like a bunch of excited monkeys. Our drama teacher put up his hand. "Okay, now both teams must throw at the same time." The crowd went wild again. We all took a step back, and Zelda was so far away she was a blur. I looked at Jorge and back at Zelda, and I put my hands up in a timeout gesture, like they do in sports games. "Time out," I shouted. I heard the crowd yelling, "Hey, you can't do that. Hurry up. Throw it." I ran to the middle of the field and gestured for Jorge to meet me. He ran to me. "What's up?" he said. "Listen, I don't think I can catch the egg. I can't see anything." I said, "Let's make a deal. If you catch the egg, you give me your pass to sports camp, and I'll give you my pass to Splash World." I could tell he wasn't going for it, so I added more. "And I'll loan you any video game I have for a whole month." Jorge rolled his eyes. "Only one?" "Okay, 2, I said. Jorge put his hand on his chin and lightly stroked it. "Yeah, but what if you do catch the egg?" "Then I'll give you my pass to Splash World and my pass to sports camp." "And the video games?" Jorge grinned. Yes, you can still borrow them." Jorge put out his hand, and we shook on it. "It's a deal," he said. I ran back to my position and rubbed my sweaty palms on my shirt and nodded. Zelda took a step back and threw the egg like a football. It was a perfect spiral. But it was going too fast. I had to step back, and just as it touched my hands, I tripped over my feet. The egg went through my hands and hit me square on the forehead. There was egg all over me, and I wiped my face and looked at Jorge, who was laughing like a nut with his egg in his hand, jumping up and down like a freaked-out kangaroo. "Splash World and hot dogs!" he kept shouting. He jumped over to Zelda, and I could tell he was telling her the deal I made with him, and she began jumping up and down and ran toward me. She gave me a high five and punched my arm. She put her arm around my shoulders, and I put my arm around hers, and we walked without being tied together. That night, my parents came to my room and knocked on the door frame. "Hey, mijo," Zelda's mother just called and told us what you did today. "Your mother and I are very proud of you," Dad said. "Thanks," I said. "Listen, tomorrow we're going to buy you a summer pass for Splash World. Sound good to you?" Dad said, and Mom nodded happily. I thought for a moment, "Thanks, Dad, thanks, Mom." but I'd rather go to sports camp. They looked a little confused. But we thought you wanted to go to Splash World, Mom said. Well, yeah, but Zelda is going to sports camp. She might need a partner, I said. Just like that, well, you can see David Rice. He's on our last page. This is his school picture. And we just read an entire book. See, it's not too difficult. You just read a little bit each day. And I know some of you would have been intimidated to pick this up, but I hope you liked it. I thought it was pretty funny at times, and a lot of the stuff that the authors wrote about were experiences that I kind of felt happen at Joy all the time. So I hope you saw yourself in some of these stories and learned quite a few lessons, and you've enjoyed the reading. I'm going to take a little break, like I said, from recording these readings. I'm going to do some reading that I kind of want to do, but if you have suggestions, you can always reach out and email me or sign up for my Google Classroom and let me know what you would like to work on or like to hear read. And I also have a ton of resources that I can point you to. You can do some reading on your own. So everybody enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk again soon.